Welcome. If you crave chilling true crime stories, real mysteries, and twists you'll never see coming, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and join a community that never looks away from the truth. Because every week, we shine a light where others won't. Are you ready? Let's begin. In the summer of 2016, Detroit was a city still bleeding from decades of decline. Factories that once pumped life into the neighborhoods now stood hollow and silent, steel skeletons baking in the heat. Whole blocks had been abandoned, houses left to rot, streets that looked like war zones. For people like Marcus, Kian, and Alana, it was the perfect hunting ground. They weren't hardened criminals. Not yet. They were kids of the city, mid-20s, restless, desperate for quick cash. Marcus was the unofficial leader, sharp-eyed, always calculating angles. He wasn't a killer, he wasn't a thug, he was a strategist. To him, every night was a chessboard. Kian, his best friend since childhood, was the muscle, bigger than the other two, but soft-spoken. He hated confrontation, but if a door needed to be kicked in or someone needed to be intimidated, Kian was the one. And then there was Alana, fierce, reckless, with a mouth sharper than a blade. She wasn't in this just for money. She liked the thrill, the adrenaline rush of sneaking into someone's life and taking what wasn't theirs. She said it made her feel powerful in a world that constantly tried to make her feel small. The three of them had built a system. Target isolated homes. Move under cover of night. Go in quick. Grab only what was easy to carry. Cash, jewelry, electronics, and vanish before anyone noticed. No alarms. No shootouts. No trails. It worked. For months, it worked. They hit houses in East Detroit, the forgotten neighborhoods where no one trusted the cops enough to call them anyway. A few $100s here, a gold chain there, sometimes a stash of pills or weed they could flip for quick cash. But it wasn't enough. Marcus had bigger dreams. He wanted out. Out of Detroit, out of the cycle, out of the slow grind of poverty. And to get out, they needed one big score. One hit so clean and so heavy that they could disappear. That's when the tip came. It was Kian who first heard about it. His cousin, Darius, was drunk at a party one night, running his mouth about some old man who lived on Leland Street, a rundown stretch on the east side where half the houses were already boarded up. Darius said the guy was sitting on money. Real money. He sued somebody. Darius slurred between sips of cheap whiskey. Some accident or military thing, I don't know. But he got paid. 6 figures, easy. And he don't trust banks. Keeps it all in cash. Swear to God. Marcus leaned in. You serious? How you know? Darius smirked. Everybody knows. Whole neighborhood whispers about it. Old man don't got family, don't got nobody. Just him in that creepy-ass house. Never spends a dime. Yard looks like shit. Windows all blacked out. But they say the money's in there. Like a dragon hoarding treasure. Alana perked up immediately. So let's go get it. Marcus hesitated. Easy scores were one thing, but this? A man with that much cash in the house. There had to be a reason nobody had hit him yet. Still, the thought gnawed at him. A hidden stash of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Enough to vanish. Enough to start over. He didn't sleep that night. Over the next week, Marcus scoped the place. The house was exactly as Darius described. A sagging, 2-story structure with peeling paint, chain-link fencing rusted and bent. The grass was waist-high, swallowing the sidewalk. Windows were boarded or covered with heavy curtains. No car in the driveway. No signs of life, except for the faint glow of light through a sliver in the curtains at night. The neighborhood itself was a ghost town. Most houses were empty, crumbling into themselves. The nearest occupied home was half a block away, and even that looked abandoned. Perfect. Marcus studied the routines. The old man rarely left. Once, Marcus saw him shuffle to the curb to drag in a garbage can. His body stooped, his hair gray, moving with the stiffness of age. He wore dark glasses even at night, his face expressionless. That's him, Alana whispered one evening as they watched from the car. Yeah, Marcus said. Looks harmless. Easy pickings, she grinned. But Marcus wasn't so sure. Something about the way the man moved, slow but deliberate, cautious, like every step was calculated. Still, the money was too tempting. They worked out the plan. Wait until after midnight, when the streets were dead silent. Kian would handle the door. Alana would search the upstairs. Marcus would check the basement and ground floor. In under 20 minutes. No violence, unless absolutely necessary. Remember, Marcus said the night before. This guy's old. He won't put up a fight. We grab the cash, we go. No messing around. Alana smirked. Easy score. But none of them knew the truth. It was August 2016. Detroit's summers were thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and made the air feel heavy. That night, the city was unnervingly still. No cars, no voices, just the distant hum of cicadas and the occasional bark of a stray dog. They parked 2 blocks away, their stolen Chevy Malibu tucked between 2 abandoned houses. Dressed in black, masks pulled tight, gloves on. Marcus checked his bag, flashlight, crowbar, duct tape, and an old revolver he swore he wouldn't use unless he had to. He hated guns, but Alana insisted. "You never know," she said. He flexed his hands nervously. "Man, I don't like this. Feels different." "Don't get soft now," Marcus said. "We've done this a dozen times. Same thing, just bigger payout." They moved like shadows down Leland Street, sticking close to the fences, ducking beneath broken streetlights. The house loomed ahead, dark and silent, like it was waiting for them. Kian took the lead, slipping a pry bar between the back door and frame. With a grunt, he pushed. The old wood splintered. The door swung open with a soft creak. They froze, listening. Silence. Marcus gave the signal. They slipped inside. The air was stale, thick with the smell of dust, and something else, something metallic, almost like rust. The floorboards creaked under their weight. The walls were lined with old photographs, their faces obscured by dust and time. Alana wrinkled her nose. "Smells like death in here." "Shut up," Marcus whispered. They split up. Alana crept up the stairs, flashlight cutting across peeling wallpaper. Marcus headed toward the basement door. Kian stayed on the ground floor, searching drawers, cabinets, anything that might hide cash. Every step Marcus took, the air grew heavier. The house didn't feel abandoned. It felt occupied, watched. He reached the basement door. It was locked. Strange. None of the other rooms were. He frowned, pulling at the knob. Locked tight. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked under Alana's weight. She froze, listening. Then, faintly, she heard something, a sound coming from one of the rooms. A low, steady breath. Her heart kicked. She turned, shining her flashlight into the darkness. And that's when she realized. They weren't alone. The man inside the house was Harold Whitaker. On paper, Harold looked like any other casualty of life's cruel turns. A decorated war veteran in his late 60s, widowed, alone, living off the scraps of a legal settlement. His military career had ended in fire and metal on the side of a dirt road in Kandahar. The blast from an IED tore through his convoy, leaving him alive but robbed of his sight. From that day forward, darkness was his world. Most men would have surrendered to it. But Harold was not most men. His neighbors rarely saw him, but when they did, they whispered. He didn't shuffle like other blind men. They said he moved with purpose, like he knew exactly where every crack in the sidewalk was. They claimed he roamed his house at night, pacing, listening, muttering to himself. That he slept in fits, if at all. And more than once, neighbors swore they saw him standing at his door in the middle of the night, head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. They thought he was strange, maybe even broken. But the truth was far more chilling. Harold had turned his home into a fortress. Not with alarms or cameras. He didn't trust technology. He trusted instinct, preparation, and the brutal lessons war had carved into him. The locks on his doors weren't just heavy. They were reinforced steel plates hidden behind old wood. Windows weren't just curtained. They were sealed, padded, designed to suffocate light and sound. And the traps. No one but Harold knew how many there were. Thin wires strung across hallways at shin height. Broken glass tucked into shadowed corners where an intruder might step. Old nails protruding from boards disguised as part of the sagging floor. The house itself was a weapon, but his most dangerous weapon wasn't in the walls. It was Harold himself. Blindness had sharpened the rest of him. He could hear the faintest scrape of a shoe against wood. Smell the musk of sweat carried on stale air. Feel the displacement of movement, the rush of air when someone entered a room. And above all, he had patience. The patience of a man who had once lain in sand for days, listening for footsteps on foreign soil. The patience of a man who knew the world would come for him eventually. and had built his life around being ready when it did. When Marcus, Kian, and Alana slipped into Harold Whitaker's house, they thought they were predators. Silent, cunning, in control. But Harold heard them the moment the back door splintered. The faint tremor of wood snapping traveled up through the floorboards like a signal. He was in his armchair in the living room, head tilted, his scarred hands resting on the cane he rarely needed. 3 sets of footsteps. Light, quick, nervous. They thought they were quiet. They weren't. Harold's lips pressed into a thin line. His whole body went still, as if carved from stone. He counted the heartbeats between each step, mapping their positions in his mind. 1 in the kitchen, 1 moving toward the stairs, 1 lingering near the basement door. 3 intruders. Young, careless. He had been waiting for this. Slowly, silently, Harold reached under the armchair cushion and wrapped his fingers around cold steel. The pistol was old but maintained, cleaned weekly, oiled until the action was smooth. Beside it, the knife, 6 inches of serrated steel, the kind issued overseas. He didn't panic. He didn't rush. He simply stood, listening, letting the house speak to him. The intruders thought the silence was their ally. They were wrong. Upstairs, Alana's flashlight cut through the stale air. She pushed open a door and found a bedroom frozen in time. Faded wallpaper, a bed made with military precision, drawers neatly closed. Dust lay thick on everything, but there was an order to it, a discipline. She frowned. This wasn't the house of some senile old man hoarding money. This was something else. She stepped further inside, her boots crunching faintly. That's when she heard it. Breathing. Low. Controlled. Coming from the corner of the room. Her light snapped toward the sound. Nothing. Just an old wardrobe, its doors slightly ajar. Her pulse quickened. She took a step closer. "Hello," she whispered, half mocking, half nervous. Silence. She smirked, trying to mask the unease tightening her throat. Must be rats. But the moment she turned her back, the wardrobe door creaked, ever so slightly. Meanwhile, Marcus still struggled with the locked basement door. He jiggled the knob, testing it. Why was this the only door in the house secured like Fort Knox? That's where the money had to be. He pulled his crowbar from the bag, wedged it into the frame, and leaned his weight. The wood groaned, but held. Sweat dripped down his temple. Behind him, the silence felt heavier. The air almost vibrated, like the house itself was holding its breath. He glanced back toward the kitchen, where Kian rummaged through drawers. "Hurry up, man," Marcus hissed. "We ain't got all night." Kian muttered something, but Marcus barely heard. His focus was on the lock, on the prize he swore was just beyond it. So focused, he didn't hear the faint shift of weight behind the living room wall. Didn't hear Harold Whitaker, barefoot, moving with the silence of a predator. Kian had opened half the cabinets already. Nothing but cans of food, stacks of dishes, everything arranged with eerie neatness. No cash, no jewelry. But then, in the bottom drawer, he found something strange. Rows of jars, dozens of them, each filled with something floating in murky liquid. He squinted, tilting the jar in the beam of his flashlight. It looked like teeth, human teeth. His stomach dropped. What the... And then he froze, because just behind him, he heard the softest sound, a floorboard settling. He turned slowly, heart hammering, but the kitchen doorway was empty. Harold moved like a ghost through his own house, every step rehearsed 1,000 times. He knew exactly where the intruders were now. The girl upstairs, the jittery one in the kitchen, the leader by the basement door. 3 threats, 3 opportunities. He holstered the pistol at his waist. Too noisy, too final. Better to save it for when he needed it most. For now, he gripped the knife, its handle worn to the shape of his palm. His lips moved silently, not in prayer, but in calculation. He would isolate them, divide them, break them down one by one. That's how you survived war. That's how you survived anything. And tonight, in his house, Harold Whitaker would remind them. He didn't need eyes to hunt. Just after midnight, Marcus finally forced the lock. The crowbar groaned against the swollen wood frame until it gave with a snap, and the basement door creaked open into blackness. A stale, damp draft washed over them, carrying the scent of mold, rust, and something else, something sharp and sour, like dried blood. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, adrenaline burning through his veins. "We're in." Alana smirked. "Told you." "Easy." Kian stayed silent, his gut twisting. He didn't like basements. didn't like the way the darkness seemed to breathe, but he followed anyway. Their flashlights flicked on, beams cutting through dust and cobwebs. The stairs creaked under their weight as they descended. At first, it looked ordinary: cinder block walls, shelves of canned goods, a workbench cluttered with tools. But everything was too neat, too precise, like it wasn't just storage, it was preparation. And then they noticed the door. At the far end of the basement stood a heavy steel door, bolted into the foundation. Unlike the rest of the house, this wasn't patched together wood or rusty hinges. This was solid, industrial. Alana frowned. What the hell is this doing here? Marcus ran his hand along the metal. That tip about money? It's in here. Kian shifted uneasily. Nah, man. That don't look like no safe room. Looks like something else. They leaned closer, and that's when they heard it. Scratching. Faint but steady, like fingernails dragging against metal. Then a muffled sound, a whimper. Alana froze, flashlight trembling. Did you hear that? Marcus's pulse spiked. He pressed his ear to the door. Another scratch. Another muffled cry. Someone was inside. They pried at the hinges, forced the lock with every ounce of strength they had. Finally, with a shriek of tearing metal, the door swung inward. The beam of Marcus's flashlight swept across the room and froze. Chained to the wall was a woman, mid-20s, gaunt, her wrists raw from struggling against heavy iron shackles. A gag muffled her cries, her eyes wide and pleading, glistening with tears. For a moment, none of them moved. Alana's voice broke first, barely a whisper. "Oh my God!" Kian stumbled back, while rising in his throat. "What the hell is this, Marcus? What the hell is this?" Marcus's brain scrambled to make sense of it. This wasn't money. This wasn't valuables. This was a nightmare. The woman tugged at her chains desperately, muffled screams filling the basement. Alana lunged forward, fumbling with the gag, yanking it free. "Please," the woman sobbed. "Please get me out. He's going to kill me. Please." But before they could respond, the basement door slammed shut. The sound reverberated through the walls like a gunshot. They spun, flashlights swinging wildly. The wooden door at the top of the stairs was closed. They heard the click of one lock. Then another. Then another. 3 locks. 4. Silence. And then footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Moving across the floor above them. Each one creaking through the ceiling beams. Marcus's mouth went dry. "Oh shit." Alana whispered. "He knows we're here." Kian's chest heaved. "We gotta get out. We gotta—" He moved to a drawer, pulled it open by feel. Inside were the tools he had prepared for years. A coil of rope, a crowbar, spare locks. He chose carefully, methodically, each movement silent as a shadow. Down below, the intruders were already breaking. He could hear it in their voices. The fear always started with confusion, then disbelief, then terror. He slid the knife into its sheath at his waist. Tonight, they wouldn't be the hunters. They would learn what it meant to be prey. What followed wasn't a burglary. It was a hunt. The moment Harold Whitaker killed the lights, the house sank into total darkness. Not the soft dark of a bedroom at night, but a suffocating black, the kind where your eyes strain for shapes that don't exist. The intruders froze. Flashlights flicked on in shaky hands, their beams slicing through the dust-filled air. Every breath sounded deafening. Every creak of the floor was a betrayal. Alana's whisper trembled. He cut the power. Kian swallowed hard. How the hell he know where the breaker is? He's blind. Marcus's voice was tight. He doesn't need eyes. He knows this house better than we ever will. And somewhere in the dark above them, a floorboard groaned. Slow, deliberate. Harold was moving. Harold had learned long ago that silence was a weapon. In war, silence meant patience. Meant waiting for the enemy to make the first mistake. And in this house, silence was absolute control. He knew every inch of his home. The boards that creaked, the hinges that sang, the places where sound carried. To him, the house was alive. Every vibration told him where they were, how fast their hearts beat, how desperate they were becoming. The girl upstairs, her breathing sharp, ragged. The heavy one pacing, boots scuffing in panic. The leader, trying to stay calm, but failing. They thought flashlights would save them. But in the dark, flashlights only betrayed position. All Harold had to do was listen. Marcus tried to rally them. "We stick together. He's one guy, old, blind. We can take him." But as he spoke, a sharp crack split the air. Something whistled past his ear, so close he felt the wind of it. and shattered against the wall behind him. A glass jar. Its shards clattered to the floor, slick liquid splashing at his shoes. The smell hit instantly. Bleach. Marcus stumbled back, coughing. From the darkness above, Harold's voice rolled down the stairs. Low, gravelly, calm. "You shouldn't be here." It wasn't a shout. It wasn't rage. It was worse. Cold certainty. The trio scrambled. Kian tried the front door. Locked. Reinforced. His kicks rattled it, but didn't budge it. Alana darted to a window, smashed the glass with her flashlight, only to find steel bars welded behind it. Marcus cursed under his breath. He locked us in. Every exit. Harold moved above them. His steps measured, circling, corralling. He wasn't chasing them. He was guiding them, herding them like animals into tighter spaces where their panic would do the work for him. And it was working. In the chaos, Alana remembered the woman in the basement. The chains, the gag, the desperation in her eyes. "This isn't about money," she hissed. "That girl, he's keeping her here for a reason." Marcus snapped. "I don't care why. We just need to." "No," Alana cut in. "Don't you get it? She's not random. She means something to him." And she was right. The woman wasn't his prisoner by chance. She was connected to Harold's past, tangled in a story no one in Detroit knew anymore. Years earlier, something had been taken from Harold, his family, his future, his sight. The system had failed him. The courts gave him money, but not justice. So Harold carved his own justice. The woman in the basement was a piece of that story, a living reminder of the crime committed against him. To Harold, she wasn't a victim. She was evidence. And now, the three intruders had stumbled onto his secret. That meant they couldn't leave. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, silence stretched so thin it felt like the house itself had stopped breathing. Then bang. The basement door flew open, slamming against the wall. Harold stood at the top of the stairs, framed in darkness. His head tilted slightly, listening, his knife glinting in the trembling beams of their flashlights. Though he was blind, his posture was unmistakable, calm, steady, certain. Marcus raised the revolver with shaking hands. "Stay back." Harold didn't move. He didn't flinch. Instead, he spoke with the quiet authority of a man who had faced worse than bullets. "You broke into the wrong house." And then, with the patience of a hunter, he descended the stairs. One step, another, each creak of wood louder than the last. The intruders weren't in control anymore. They were prey. By dawn, the house on Leland Street stood broken. Glass glittered across the lawn like scattered diamonds. Curtains flapped in the humid breeze, and the front door hung off its hinges. But it wasn't the wreckage that woke the neighbors. It was the screaming. Alana. She stumbled into the street barefoot, her black clothes shredded, her arms and face slashed from crawling through a jagged window. Blood smeared her skin, her eyes wild with terror. She collapsed onto the asphalt, sobbing so hard her words came out jagged. "The blind man," she gasped. He's not a victim. He's a monster." Her cries echoed down the hollow street, rousing those who still lived in the abandoned shells of homes nearby. For the first time in years, Leland Street was alive with movement. Curtains twitching, doors cracking open, whispers rising like static. Within an hour, flashing red and blue lights bathed the block. When police stormed the house, they expected chaos. Gunfire, resistance, maybe even bodies. Instead, they found Harold Whitaker sitting calmly in his armchair, his cane resting across his knees. His face was blank, almost serene, as if nothing at all had happened. He didn't fight. He didn't explain. He didn't even turn his head when they surrounded him. But the house told the story for him. Soundproof rooms hidden behind false walls. Restraints bolted into the floor. Steel-reinforced doors that only locked from the outside. Hidden caches of weapons, some military issue. Others improvised with the creativity of a man who had lived too long in darkness. And in the basement, they found her, the woman. She was alive, though barely. Her body trembled uncontrollably as officers cut through the chains. When they pulled the gag from her mouth, she whimpered but spoke no words. Her eyes darted everywhere, as if she still felt Harold's presence in every shadow. "Can you tell us what happened to you?" one detective asked gently. But she only shook her head, tears spilling silently down her face. Word spread fast. A decorated veteran, a blind recluse, hiding something unspeakable inside his home. but the details blurred with rumor, and the biggest question of all was never answered. Where was the money? The supposed settlement cash, hundreds of thousands of dollars, was nowhere to be found. Not in the basement, not under floorboards, not in the walls. Some whispered Harold had buried it deep inside the house itself, cemented into foundations no one could reach. Others believed he'd spent it years ago, not on himself, but to buy silence from people who had once tried to expose him. And then there were darker theories, that the money had never existed, that the treasure was just bait, a lure whispered into the neighborhood so greedy souls would come knocking, and Harold would have prey to hunt. The trial shocked the city. Prosecutors had plenty of evidence of unlawful imprisonment, weapons charges, even building code violations that made the house look like a torture chamber. But without testimony, without the woman's words, they couldn't prove what Harold had actually done. Trauma had sealed her lips shut. So in the end, the charges shrank. What should have been a life sentence dwindled into years, and what should have been closure turned into outrage. After a short stint behind bars, Harold Whitaker walked free. No confession, no apology, no justice for those who entered his house and never walked out. Today, Harold lives quietly. His house is still boarded up, the windows sealed, the grass growing tall around it like a moat of weeds. Children dare each other to run up the porch steps, but none stay long. And neighbors, those few who remain, swear that at night, when the world is silent and the wind carries just right, you can hear it. The groan of a floorboard, the deliberate weight of footsteps, the sound of a man who doesn't need eyes to see you. Of Marcus and Kian, little is known. Some say their bodies were never recovered. Others whisper Harold buried them in the walls with his missing cash. Only Alana survived to tell the tale, but her words came in fragments, screams, nightmares. And the woman who was freed from the basement? She disappeared from public record, vanishing as if the world wanted to forget her ordeal. What remains is the legend. The story of a blind hunter who turned his home into a trap. A story that reminds us sometimes the real monsters aren't in the dark, they are the dark. And if you ever find yourself walking down Leland Street on a summer night, remember, you might think the house is empty, but Harold Whitaker is always listening.